Hello and welcome to another video. After the success of the M4 Mac Mini video, I see a lot of you in the comments talking about Unreal Engine, and this video is basically about installing Unreal Engine and giving it a performance test and a quick tutorial on how to get up and running and seeing what we can get out of this base spec 16GB 256 hard drive Mac Mini. So the first thing we need to go to is the Epic Store to get the launcher. First of all, we got to allow this. And there's the Epic installer. Drag that in there and then just launch the first error we get is that we need to install Rosetta. So we're going to go ahead and do this. You might already have this on your Mac, but this is a brand new Mac straight from the store. After this, we should just be able to launch this. On previous computers, I've had problems with this. So let's see if this works. And that was pretty painless so far. Here we need to register an Epic account if you don't have one. I have one, so I'm going to sign in. And there we have the Epic launcher. So what we need to do is just go into Unreal Engine here. Library. And we will add 5.4.4 for now. We're not going to go with the 5.5 preview. Accept this, and also we'll install the Fab plugin at some point as well. Now this may take some time, and this is one of my biggest qualms about using Unreal on this Mac is the size of the hard drive. So I've done what every sensible Mac user should do and binned iMovie. I quite like GarageBand, but I'm close to doing that. I think I might bin Keynote as well if it lets me. So let's have a quick look at my hard drive use here. At the minute we're on 203GB left. And I'll just let this install and get back to this in a moment. Okay, that's installed without any issues so far. Now one thing I'm going to do recurringly throughout this video is to check on our hard drive space, because we know that Unreal eats hard drive, and I know that I only have 256 gig on this Mac. So if I go on the hard drive now, it looks like I am about 100 gig down. There's a few little tricks you can do here to free up some space. Let's have a look and see if these are available to Mac users. If we go into options here, the core components unfortunately taking up most of the things. Starter content, I wouldn't recommend getting rid of that. Template and feature packs, you could potentially get rid of these to free up some space. This is things like your architecture templates, different scenes that you can start with. For 3.67 gig, I'm going to not do that for now, yeah? So next thing I'm going to do is launch Unreal for the first time, and this could take some time. Let's see. And could we have hit our first hurdle already? Let's see. XCode not found. Okay, I knew that from my previous video that I made myself, that we need to install XCode. So let's see what we need to do there. So this is telling me 15.3, this is telling me 14.3. Okay, I'm back in the App Store because that version of XCode didn't work with my OS. Thank you, AI. So I am going to try the latest one. F my life. I'm going to open XCode, and I am not going to go with the predictive code. Let's just install for now and see what happens. Okay, let's quit out of Xcode. And I've emptied my trash and checking my hard drive size again, 142 gigabytes. I'm going to quit out of this launcher and go back in again. Okay, let's try this again. So this may take some time. Go have a coffee, come back later. Let's see where we're at. Just click allow to these. And here we are, we've got Unreal Engine. Let's go to first person first. Test. Create. Allow everything. Wait for more shaders. And let's press play and see what we got. Okay, now there's a main console command you can pull from here. It's called stat FPS. And if we just highlight that and click on it, then that will give us it'll give us an FPS counter here in the top right hand corner. And already we can see it's pretty low. I'd expect this to be at least 60 for it to be playable. Let's see if we can make some changes to bring this down. Let's play it in a standard viewport first. Now bear in mind this is 2560 by 1440. And let's see if there's anything we can do to improve this. The first place I would usually go to is engine scalability, where everything's on epic at the moment. Let's flip this to high or even medium and see if we get back some control. So I'm getting a slightly better frame rate now. Definitely feels more playable. Let's quit that. Next we're going to go to fab.com to get some additional content to try out. I'm going to search content examples. And I've already added this to my library, but if you want to add it, you can just click view in my library. And this contains a bunch of different examples of landscapes, physics, particles, lots of other good stuff. And we'll see how this runs. I'm also going to search for Lyra. Lyra is a third-person multiplayer framework that you can use to customize and build your own games on. And there's stacks of tutorials built on this. I'm going to grab this as well. And these should be added to my Epic launcher now. If they're not, you can just hit this refresh. And what I can do is I can create a project with content examples that I've already done here. And I can create a project for Lyra, which I've also done here. You'll have to go through the same thing of installing, waiting for shaders to compile before you can run these projects. Quick hard drive check. With these extra marketplace assets, I'm currently looking at about 120 gig left. So hard drive is fast being eaten up. What I'm going to do next is just show you some stuff with the starter content as well. This time we can go games and launch a third person. And I'm going to press Control Space to bring up my content browser. And this time I'm going to add, from clicking here, and go to add feature content pack and bring in this starter content, which has a bunch of different materials and particle effects which we can test out. Click Add to Project. What we can do now is just click on Maps here and go to the starter map. Let's do the same here by typing in our stat FPS. And also let's go a step further by trying out stat GPU as well, which will give us more detailed GPU statistics. We can see things like Lumen coming into it here and taking up 5 or 6 milliseconds of render time. What that correlates to here is 20 FPS is roughly 47, 48 milliseconds here. Ideally, we should be looking about 3 times less than that, about 15 milliseconds would be acceptable. Now let's try some different stuff here. Scalability at the minute is epic. Let's switch to high. That gives us some frames back. We're up to about 36 or 27 FPS. And we were going to try to disable Lumen now because we can see that Lumen's working in the background. The way we can see that is to move objects around and see that the shadows are following us. And the reflections here are following as well. So Lumen is working. Let's see what happens if we drop Lumen out. And we can do this by going to our project settings. And turning our dynamic global illumination method to none here. And our reflection method to none as well. And immediately we're seeing a slight frame rate increase here, but we're seeing the quality of the shading is deteriorated significantly. So not as big a frame rate loss as what I would expect for this. If I just go to the post-process and search for Lumen here, we can activate this again and see what we're getting for our FPS or our milliseconds here. We're getting about 34 with Lumen active. And with Lumen GI and reflections gone, we're getting about 29. So about 15 to 20%. Somebody do the maths and help me out here. But then again, if we drop the scalability down here to medium, we're starting to get something closer to being a little bit more acceptable here. About 25 here. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try to bring some Nanite meshes in and see how Nanite works. So I'm just going to go into my project settings here. And I need to check to type in metal in the project settings here. And ensure that this box here is checked. Apparently this is how we get Nanite to work, and I'll have to restart my project. So let's just do a quick save. Wait for our shaders, and let's import that share that we worked on yesterday. And we'll import that as Nanite. So I'm just going to go import here while we're waiting for these shaders. And it's a 305 megabyte, about 500,000 polys. And when we're importing, we need to check this build Nanite here and just click on import. Okay, let's bring that share in. And it's got a 4K texture map, and let's remove this chair. And let's turn that round, and we're going to bring up our stat GPU again. And our engine scalability, we can pop that back down to high. And let's see if we can bring Lumen back in there again. So our performance is tanking a little bit. Let's have a little play of this and see what happens, because before Nanite meshes weren't working when I press play. But the shading on this is looking pretty good to me. But my frame rate is not brilliant here. I'm getting under 20 FPS. But there's my chair in all its glory. Okay, on to testing some other stuff now. Okay, I've restarted my project, and I'm going to try that airport scene now. So if I go military airport here and just go maps, let's have a look and see how this fares on our Mac. And I'll have to wait for some shaders to compile. And I'm already starting to get this dreaded texture pool error, which usually results from you not having enough VRAM. Okay, that's the shaders compiled. Let's see. And there I am playing it. Albeit with some texture pooling errors. Let's do that stat FPS and let's see if we can add a character. In about 40 FPS. Now I've just pressed Control Apple L to get some real-time lighting going in here. And put the settings up to high and wait to see what happens. It does feel slower here, dropping down to about 24 FPS. And I can feel it whenever I'm moving around. I'll try this whilst I'm not recording OBS to see if I get any frame increase. Okay, so I'm up and running with content examples and press play. And I'm still getting about 24 FPS here. Let's check some of the physics out. Now let's see if we can boost performance here a little bit. And I'm going to change the scalability to medium here. And immediately I'm getting poorer quality here. So let's see if we can change some things to high. Global illumination seems to be the one. Let's go and open another map. Let's try landscape here, level landscape. And here we have a basic landscape with some foliage, and I'm getting a drop to it's dropping down to about 25 FPS now. Now this crashed before when I tried this, but let's see if we can get this into a standalone. Oof, that is slower. Let's try new editor window. That doesn't seem to be too bad. Okay, I've dropped the resolution on my Mac to 1920 by 1080. Let's see if that helps. And hey, we're getting closer to 60 FPS now. It's almost feels playable now. Let's try to get that scalability up to high. Everything up to high. Give that another go. We're getting between 36 and 40 here now. Okay, so let's do some showing off. This is Lyra running at a massive resolution of 5440 times 1440. And the engine scalability has been dropped quite heavily on this one to medium. But it's playable. I would never have imagined I'm sitting with a 500-pound Mac on a 49-inch ultra-wide screen gaming in multiplayer. And when I switch it to 2560 by 1440, which is a far more realistic gaming resolution, I'm getting almost 60 FPS, or at least between 50 and 60 consistently, which is fully playable. Also, Lyra is fully customizable. There's many tutorials on this, and you really can learn Unreal Engine inside out by using this project and customizing it with your own avatars, textures, geometry, anything else you want. So you can learn Unreal on this Mac. Okay, let's give this poor Mac a rest. So what can I say? First off, I'm impressed with the ease at which you can install UE5 on the Universal Binary Installer. I'd previously made videos on both Intel and an M1 Mac, and it was painful getting set up. Here we just needed the latest XCode and Rosetta, and we were up and running with shaders compiling faster than ever. The performance of the M4 seems to be quite similar to what I was getting on the Intel and the M1, although I hadn't tried things like Lumen and Nanite, which seemed to work just fine for me here. With a high scalability, I'm still not getting a fully playable frame rate, but I'm able to bring in a 500,000 polygon mesh with Nanite and light it up beautifully, just like I would on the PC version. Whether this works for cinematics or not, I'm not sure yet. When I ran foliage and landscapes in their basic form, I got frame drops, but the example that impressed me the most was probably Lyra. Alright, so it doesn't have much by way of textures, geometry, animation, etc. going on, but it's a complex and advanced multiplayer shooter framework and offers an excellent base for creating and configuring your own games and learning the engine. On low to medium settings, even on 2560 by 1440, I was getting between 45 to 50 FPS. So could this Mac be used to develop my own games? If you can deal without the features that make UE5 so attractive on a higher frame rate, baked light, for example, is still the norm in many games, and we could use this. Blueprint scripting and learning lighting basics are also entirely possible here. I've previously packaged successfully for OpenXR VR headsets, and this Mac should prove no different. Mobile and APK packaging also should work without any issues on Mac, and others are developing for iOS and attempting Apple Vision Pro development using Unreal 5 on the Apple platform. And for all these devices, computationally expensive rendering techniques are not required in the editor. For the price point of this machine, well, yes, you could get an older self-built PC with RAM and hard drive easily upgradable to cope with Unreal's thirst for both. But what I've seen in my tests proves that Epic software and examples do indeed work on this Mac, and with some tweaking can be made acceptable. Should the engine contributors and ultimately Apple themselves wish to develop UE5 for Mac further, I would imagine there would have to be some friendships made in the background and ultimately for Apple to take gaming more seriously. With Unity already having Apple Vision support and being the main choice for game developers in 2D and mobile platforms, this engine may offer more for Apple users and might be the choice for full support moving forwards. Thanks for watching, and join me on my Patreon for examples of code, projects, and for me to answer more of your questions concisely on my Discord. Bye for now.